Mom, I'm on TV.
Hi, Mom.
Wow, we made it through.
Yeah, most of the gates, well, not most, some of the gates are back online. They're all on, off at the moment. I think that's going to continue until downtime tomorrow.
Yeah, I think this instability is going to get worse and worse on the entire network. At least that's what was hinted at in the scope video, right?
You know, the funny thing is, like, I know I haven't moved like mats in materials in high sec, like ore in high sec, to refine it before Tuesday, and I'm fairly certain that I am the very typical of a lot of people probably in high sec. This feels kind of like, you know, say when Goonswarm says, "Oh yeah, we're going to do burn jitter at this point or at this date," and then they start it like a weekend earlier.
If you're a bit out of like caught out and out of place.
Yeah, I'm like, oh crap.
Like when they announced the middle changes, I went ahead and contacted people I know of huge ore socks. It was like, yeah, I've got its sell value in GT44 is like 140 billion. So yeah, I'll give you 15 for it. It's like done because after the patch it was going to be worth about 15 to 17 bill, and I bought a Titan's worth of mineral bill.
That's insane.
McLeod, since I'm pretty much sure that your prediction is going to be correct, that those forming fleets are going to be the ones that actually shoot the gates and take them off the grid, do you think we can stop those fleets? Do you think we can get Minilov to go in there and just try to defend them?
Just wave after wave of like ECM bursting Atrons.
Because if we can keep the cancer in the game, it might actually be a little bit like in World of Warcraft when they did that thing with the plague.
That'd be really funny if like Capsuleers could actually lock it up and rep it without like, you know, being attacked and killed by Concord.
I think it's probably more realistic that we'd kill people trying to kill the factions, shooting the gate.
Oh, what's that? What's the trig ship? That's the remote repair ship. Begins with R.
Rediva.
Rediva, yeah. But like if you went to try and like rep the Stargates from the from the faction navies and stuff, shooting it up like that would be even better. Especially in a Rediva.
Does anyone want to answer that question in Twitch chat about the lore behind why these gates are actually shutting down?
No.
The Triglavians want to cause mass disruption. They studied us, they learned how we work, and they realized if they turn things offline, it really does impact.
Well, if I remember correctly, it's something to do with the fact that some of the elements that you can harvest from suns are Isogen 5, right? And this is tied into what runs the gate network. The gate network needs to be in specific positions, and they're tied into the interactions with this fluid router network thing that runs on things like Isogen 5. And what the Triglavians have been doing is they are trying to, well, I don't think it's terraform because that doesn't really fit, that's on planets. So it's solar forming, right? Or stellar forming the solar systems. And by doing that, they've started doing those siphoning things where you can see them put a big straw in and suck at the sun. This has made the whole gate network unstable and basically corrupted. So this is why it's flickering on and off, and basically the effects of the Triglavian space being populated, which is going to be rolling out as call it a completely new region, with 3 constellations, 1 for each clade. So basically, it's that effect, and all of that is basically disrupting our gate network. And we think, or it was mentioned on the scope, that this has had potentially catastrophic effects. So this might actually get worse before it gets better. And current theory is, and McLeod here was pointing out, he thinks that the forming fleets on the gates to Trig space are actually going to get attacked by those fleets. So the forming fleets of the Empire will actually kill the gates to take them off the grid, and thus save the rest of the grid.
I see
My-
someone asking in chat. Do we think anyone's actually going to live in this space permanently? Any
Yeah.
major groups or anything like that, do you think?
For sure, yes.
Well, I'm
People
still
thought-
curious
pe-
about how imports exports are going to work, because I know that CCP mentioned Triglavian space on the resource stream, and they basically said that the fact that these specific ore types that are available in Trig space are the alternative resource faucet to make up for what has been lost with the resource distribution, right? So
Yeah.
they must have some sort of plan on how to get things in and out.
Well, it doesn't even require that. Like, 'cause those resources are potentially going to still be available in, like, minor Edencom victories as well, and Edencom fortresses as well. So those materials can potentially be, sort of harvested there. It doesn't require you to go into Trig space, but there's some sort of leaked information from various different sources. Spot knows, like we basically got this via Spot as well. That there's going to be what is it?
New filament.
Oh yeah, the
Home
filament,
dash
yeah,
15.
filament. So it's basically a filament that almost ensures that you'll get into Trig space. Whether you can use those filaments for large enough ships to get like significant amounts of material in and out, I don't know. I don't know whether the filament, like whether you can use filaments on capital ships or whether you can use filaments on freighters before. Like, I'm fairly certain nobody has really thought about, like, oh yes, I shall use a filament on a freighter because that's a good idea.
Capital filaments. Wow.
People filamenting around with orcas already.
But if you can use a random filament to filament out, like with an orca, out of a Trig space into known space, then like basically those two facilitates trade in and out of Trig space.
Someone did a data mine on Reddit. It says here this way: there's apparently there's variations of elements, one being border, internal, and home. There's filaments out to exit Trig space into the nearby K space or minor victory systems, as well as there are 5 new wormholes that seem to have a mass that allows battleships and orcas, but does not allow bowhead freighters or capital.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, we
there's
kind of knew
also-
about the wormholes, right? That they were tinkering with new wormholes in there. I think that was leaked a while back.
I think every single wormholer gets a little bit like nervous when CCP starts tinkering with wormhole stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
I think
there has been changes in like wormhole spawn rates within liminal systems for the last few weeks.
Hey Ash, how do you like the fact that CCP has destroyed our meme? This is not even Christmas yet.
It does also
I mean, I like to call this an attention-seeking exercise.
Yeah. Also,
I can't
do see as
use-
well a Triglavian ore reprocessing skill list.
It's just
Yeah, I
regular
also
approaches.
I caught
Sorry.
that there's also a new type of ore too. Is that true?
I didn't hear that yet. I haven't
Somebody-
seen anything.
Okay, somebody said that there might be like a higher level of Triglavian ore along with the reprocessing skills, but I'm not sure.
There is, because if you look at the rebalanced dev blog that CCP put out, there are new Triglavian ore types in there.
Oh yeah.
Right. I know that Rakavine, Besnazine, and Talassonite are all getting rebalanced along with all the other ores, but from my understanding, or I had heard that there's a new ore that is also in the files along with everything else right now, but I could be wrong.
Interesting.
I've not seen any evidence.
I'm
of
still
that.
getting everything secondhand, so like if somebody else knows more, then that's fine.
No, I haven't seen
It could just be reprocessing skills. That's fine.
Yeah, there's a set of processing skills for each of the three. As far as I know, there's no new ore. There might be, but I've not seen any evidence of it.
That could just be it. I could have just it could have telephoned its way to me.
There was a good Reddit comment somewhere. I'm just trying to find that had a really good summary of everything that's been found so far. Just gonna
Ash,
find
can you correct me? What is the correct way of using the term Bujan?
As in like the domain of Bouillon?
Yes. How does this tie into all of this? What is up with those constellations and clades and
Right.
all that shenanigan? What's the difference?
So the domain of Bouillon is either just a general term that's a blanket for everything that the Triglavians control, or it could actually be another system that we haven't gotten access to yet. The liminal systems are going to be the domain of Poshevin, which means soil, and it's unclear whether or not, like, by establishing themselves, this will, like, the domain of Bouillon will quote unquote extend into this because they now own it, or if there will be some like central system that we can transfer to from these systems. I haven't heard any confirmation either way yet.
Are we getting a station in each of the clade constellations, right?
I would expect at least in the centermost systems. There's three core systems.
Yeah, on this Reddit post, which has a large number of data mine stuff, it states here that capital systems contain an anchorage, which would be large enough to dock the world arcs.
Right.
We see stations remain with old names, but they trig owners and all of their agents removed. And there's obviously a special star model. It seems like there's going to be at least 3 of these anchorage structures.
Yeah, one for each clade. So basically there's a home system, and then there's like a boundary area, and then there's the outermost systems. And the outermost systems are connected to each other. So like each clade, their two outermost systems is connected to one of the other 2 outermost systems, or other 2 clades' outermost system. So they create like I found a good there's a good image of a triangle layout of them. Have you seen that one yet? I can get it to you if you need it.
Yeah, I've seen
Yeah,
it.
it's pretty cool. I think it's in the EVE Online chat. Like, you just need to scroll up a bit.
Well, there you go then.
I'm being corrected by our Slavic expert that it's Bujan and not Bujan.
Yeah, it's Bouillon. It's pronounced with a Y.
The magical
Sorry,
island that appears and disappears with the tides.
So it's
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
so it's,
It's like they're Atlantis.
so it's not pronounced Buyakasha.
So the central system will appear and disappear?
Well, whether they follow
Well-
the mythological version that closely is to be.
In
discovered.
theory, you could claim that these regions are all both appearing and disappearing with moments of wormholes and filaments like that. There's no set entry to this region. So like you can take
the
a
domain of
regular
Bouillon-
Stargate bit.
The domain of Bouillon is something that has existed for the Triglavians since before their invasion, right? So, because they refer to it in their very first connections, statements to us, and they even have it in some of the earliest data streams, because it says that they are going to purge Sancha from the flow of Virage, the ancient domains, in the domain of Bouillon, which is the first time we ever saw its name. And then they refer to the domain of Bouillon in their first video, where they say that capsuleers within the flow that are may be fit to enter into the domain of Bouillon. It's also worth noting that, like, the deeper into it you're going to go, the higher Triglavian standings you're going to require to go in. So my guess would be like the centermost systems. If there is a domain of Bouillon, then the centermost systems would be the ones linking to them.
This just got even more interesting. What about Jita, Ash? What Jita by Christmas? What about our big build out of Jita 4.4?
I mean, well, they said it was going to take a year, and it's been a little bit over a year now. So I can only imagine that whatever it was that they wanted to do, like at the end of it, was potentially delayed. It could be because they wanted the invasions to finish up. It could be because of technical reasons. Whatever it is that's causing that to happen, I'm sure that they will proceed with Jita when they're ready. I would imagine that it'll probably be soon.
So you think this has always actually been tied into this whole event, and it's supposed to be part of the conclusion?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I personally believe that the attack on Jita will be not by Triglavians. I think that that's going to be the big plot twist, but that's more just like me trying to be a good storyteller.
Do you agree with McLeod and me that the empires are actually going to physically shoot and destroy the gates?
That's actually a really interesting.
There's been wrecks of the gates referenced.
My thought process on that, Ash, is in order to basically streamline the autopiloting system, because generally the autopiloting system tends to hook into like physical objects in space. So if they remove those objects, then there's less likelihood from a sort of, I guess, from a programming standpoint that autopiloting systems won't like latch on to gates that don't function or that kind of thing if they don't actually exist in space.
Yeah, well, I mean, we know that there's going to be a database change, right? So whatever, like they could just completely edit out those systems. Chances are what they'll probably do is actually reflag these systems as being like a new type of C-class wormhole, just like they have with previous ones. So that way they can make like wormholes that specifically connect to this system versus other systems and such like that. And then because like I imagine that they'll just like we're going to go down for downtime, and then when it comes back up, the gates won't work anymore. That's my expectation, but they could do something fancier. But if it does require a database change, I'd expect it to happen during a downtime.
I think that might be why they said.
Fancier.
I think that's why they said they hope to be up after an hour, because if they're changing the Stargate database by actually removing them from the entry, that could cause some trouble, and that might.
Well, yeah, and they're also going to be changing the fundamental nature of these systems themselves. So we just don't know how much or in what ways. There's going to be some interesting questions because, like, one of the questions that I have is if you are in that system, right? Technically speaking, you have no way out, but you're still like in a physical location in the universe. So technically, you should still be the same number of light years away from like a low-sec Sino. So will we be able to jump out, or are they literally going to like pull it into another reality so that way it doesn't connect like wormhole space does?
I genuinely want to get a recon and put it in there so I can light coverts and regular signers, see if it can actually latch onto it.
Funny you should mention that.
Does someone already have a Sino in there?
I may or may not have just done that.
Yeah, seems like Sully has already beat me to it.
Yep.
Right,
When I saw the list.
Strybog has a whole has a two Fortizars in there and is putting up a market and stuff. There's been a lot of drama going on in the last couple of days in TTI.
Are you gonna live there, Ash?
Yeah, man, I don't know about myself personally. Just because I need flexibility to be able to do other things. I know that there's a lot of people that are very interested in it.
I thought that you were almost like an automatic citizen.
Well, I mean, I got a lot of things to do, you know.
I'm sure he's got the uniform.
I do. Although I will admit that it was gifted to me by somebody who did all the real work.
That's the point. They were market, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. There. Say again? My stream? Your stream? Okay.
Matt will just put you up there.
Let me pull it up.
No, that was where you should say, "Look, Ma, I'm on TV." Yeah, I think with the changes, what they'll do is they won't so much move them in space. I don't think they'll move their physical location. What I think they just will do is classify them as a new region. Because I know Squiz has disabled Z-Kill's kill parsing at the moment because he's unsure of how it's going to affect the database that he has with these systems names and like that. So he's completely paused Z-Kill until it's understood how it's going to affect it, which I think is quite not so much a major issue with the game, but in terms of the community, that's a big thing. I mean, we saw it when Z-Kill went down the other day about how many posts went up on Reddit about the outage.
So, Sully, you were saying earlier that this made you really want to get into RPing and actually move into Trig space. So, why don't you hook up with Ash and start the branch in there?
I am currently trying to think of a good Triglavian lore-based name for my character, and I'm currently trying. So, if anyone has any good suggestions,
But you're the in-house Russian.
I had a really good name that's kind of a weird, obscure reference for a character that I was going to play with, but I biomassed it, so you can have it if you want.
for over.
There was a reference dropped in a sound file if you patch it up, go to Zarathustra, which is some esoteric religious reference, if anyone knows it. That actually shut up, Caleb. That actually in some ways ties in quite well with the Triglavian lore. So I made a character called Spitama Asher, which is a reference to Zarathustra. If you want to steal that one, so it's like it's an off reference if you want to steal it.
Yeah, I just need to find a character space now. I might have to roll.
That's why God created alphas.
Yeah, I've got enough accounts already, though.
Lies.
No, really.
I'm just waiting for them to drop the super secret Triglavian remix of Wrecking Machine. I thought they were going to do it, but they didn't. So close.
I'm really interested to see if signers can still be going up in some of these systems, because there was a couple of low-sec systems on the list. There were low-sec systems, rather.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Like, it's obviously not going to work in the high sec systems because, well, I mean, at least at the moment, because obviously even though they're low sec / null sec now, they're essentially to some degree high sec.
Yes, even though there is no concord response, and therefore it is null security for the purposes of that, it is still has the same restrictions that a normal high-sec system would when it comes to booshes, bombs, etc. Again, this might change tomorrow. One of the things that's really interesting is that with these systems being stitched together, some of the systems are low-sec and therefore allow sinos and capitals. Some of them are not low-sec and therefore do not allow sinos and capitals. So it'll be interesting to see like which systems end up with capitals in them in the domain of Potion, and whether or not capitals will be able to transit between them, because right now, from my understanding, all of the wormholes don't allow capital-sized vessels. So it'll solely be a question of whether or not the actual conduits themselves will also allow, or will not allow capitals. And if so, then there will be certain systems that have capitals and certain systems that don't. I mean, if not, rather.
Can I language nerd and say it's Poshvin?
What is it? Poshvin?
Poshvin.
Poshwin?
Pochvin.
Pochvin. Okay, good. Thank you. I'm dyslexic, so I don't pronounce anything correctly.
Oh no, it's because it's obscure in Russian.
Their whole fucking
Little bit of both.
Cyrillic thing is dyslexic.
Yeah. Well, the
Cyrillic's
problem is
great
that
because it's phonetic. That word.
right,
They
it's
kinda had
phonetic, but
to.
my brain doesn't go through the process of being able to, deal with it correctly all the time. Like
It just
I've had to be
correctly.
corrected on a lot of Triglavian stuff.
You should check out the first iteration, Ashterothi. You would find that hilarious. It looks like actual demonology sigils or something.
I just found a bug with the naming market window, which is quite interesting. I was looking for the Triglavian suits. The men's Triglavian survival suit for liminality is in the women's outerwear section.
Well done, golf clap.
I'm trying to find where the outfit Ashterothi has. Can't find the name of it.
Is that the one you get for being one of the most bestest Triglavian supporters?
Yeah, it's for 3.0 standings at the time of final liminality, of the 27th final liminality.
I'm really interested in what this sort of potential implication of a Triglavian LP store is all about. They start talking about.
Is there really an LP store? I'd be kind of disappointed by that.
Well, they talk about these doodads. I've forgotten what they're called now. Neuro somethings that are some kind of store of your personality or culture or something like that drop from certain enemies that you're going to be able to pick up and then redeem with the Triglavians. Just the wording and the mechanics sounds a bit sounds a bit LP story because it
Yeah, they'll
sounds
probably
like you
use
can
their
trade them
LP
in for
store.
stuff.
Yeah, probably just like so right now Edencom, if you get DDLP, you have to turn it in with red loot and some trig rare drops in order to get stuff from the DDLP store. So they'll probably just like use that same concept.
It sounds close enough to me.
Yeah. Like right now, if you want to get like the Edencom skill books or whatever it is, for example, you would need to have DDLP. I believe you still need Triglavian survey databases, and you also need, I think, the holographic transcriber, one of the 2 or 3 MacGuffins that drop off of Triglavians now.
These new MacGuffins sound like they come from sleepers, drifters, drones. I don't think they mentioned anyone else actually, but yeah, those basically the people that Triglavians don't like.
What about Sancha? One of the things I've been theorizing is that now that the flow is cleaved, as it were, and each of the 3 clades of the Triglavians have their own holdings, what I am most interested in is whether or not we are going, if this means that we're going to be able to deal with them individually, right? Because like Svarog may be more interested in the Sanchez Nation storyline, and Velez may be more interested in the Road Drone storyline, and that may leave Perun to be focused more on the sleeper/drifter threat.
Which brings on the
Makes sense.
prediction that you forgot to make, Ash. Who's gonna attack Jita?
I mean, there's a lot of good candidates. Either an Empire or Sancha is my guess. It could be the Drifters, but I don't think the Drifters have it. That shadow doesn't look Hive-like to me.
Oh, that's interesting. So, who are the you got Perrin, Velez, and Svarog, the 3 main dudes in the magical world of Triglav.
Those are the 3 clades, yeah.
And so you've got those 3 variants of every station. So I'm going to guess every single station that currently exists is going to get a graphical tweak to say that this one belongs to Perrin, this one belongs to Velez, Svarog, etc. But there's also a 4th variation just called Convocation, which means there's going to be some potential Triglavian neutral ground that doesn't belong to any of the 3 in particular.
That could be the Domain of Bouillon.
Guessing right.
Yeah, if there's a central system that we still don't have any information about that you can link to from these systems, like the Domain of Bouillon has been theorized, then that would make sense that would fall under the convocation of Triglav outside of the struggle. If you open up the Triglavian collective in game, the alliance or faction or whatever, and you look at the member corps, you'll see that there are 4. There's the 3 clades in the convocation of Triglav outside of the struggle.
So does that mean Porcevin is not Bujan? Because I thought it was. Sorry, Bujan. I thought it was Bujan, but it's not.
No, potion or whatever may become bouillon. Like that's the process, right? So the Chislav Zemikorg Noemata is basically their idea, their strategy to bring themselves back to the ancient domains effectively. And so they said like the flow of virage from the domain of beyond to the ancient domains shall pass from first liminality to second liminality, last to breach third liminality. So that was the first step, right? So we went in and we went to the ancient domains and we caused the third liminality, final liminality in these systems, right? So then when that was done and totality was achieved, it said that the domain of Bouillon shall come through the domain of Poshvin. These sites are still unproven. This is the uncultivated soil, and each of the clades are basically being given instructions to cultivate and to develop their territory so that way it can become properly domain of Bouillon.
Well, to me, some things more suggest that Beyond is simply what they refer to as abyssal dead space, because the mythical Beyond in the real world is the source of weather, which would kind of tie up metaliminal storms, beyond stuff, things. You see where I'm going?
Yeah, well, we know they refer to abyssal traces or the abyssal territories. It would seem that that's being referred to as the conduit loop constructs. So they'll have a exclave blank, some number of conduit loop construct, some number, and that's how they refer to different locations, probably within the abyss. So this is why I've said like the domain of beyond kind of seems to imply like it just says our territories, right? So the abyss could be part of the domain of beyond, and then some other area could also be part of the domain of beyond that we've never been to before. Hold on, my son's excited.
Interesting though, there's a mention of it's a bit of a lore message, but so they're talking about in a station that's been taken over by Triglavians. It says many chambers are devoted to the purposes to adapt both Triglavians and non-Triglavians based on their needs and environmental adjustments. So it sounds like the Triglavians aren't like full genocide, all the not Trigs. They sound like they're actually making some accommodation for.
Correct, and this has been true since the beginning. So before even Chapter 3 happened, then there were colonies of humans being kidnapped. In fact, there was a specific colony that like every single atom of biological matter was taken, and then it was found on another planet, in a storm planet, guarded by Triglavian drones and stuff. And unfortunately, we actually have never had any really good information about what has happened during this time when Trig capture people, because all of the information that we have is from the World News and from Edencom. So it's all super, suspect type stuff. But there has been in the World News accusations that not only are the Triglavians like interfacing with the people in the liminal systems, but they're actually doing like providing biological manipulations and mutations in order to make transition easier, right? To actually help people as opposed to just like hurt people. The Triglavians seem to have some sort of philosophy that anyone who is capable and willing to be part of their flow should be given the opportunity, just like the road drones, right? Like if proper sentientness could be established, then they must be offered the opportunity to work within the flow of Virage.
I just found the name of those MacGuffins I was mentioning earlier that you can potentially turn into some kind of LP store. They're called neurosynaptic profiles.
Interesting.
If that means much to you.
Could be. So today's message said, ancient domain stabilization proceeding. Domain of Poshvin conduit weaving realized. Cry Perun liminality field established. Cry Svarog liminality field established. Cry Velez liminality field established. Chislav Zemikorg Noemata integration phase.
Spooky words.
I'm trying to find the last message too.
One thing that I'm finding interesting as well is that within Portugal, there is also the Triglavian gates, their own gates of their own design that allow them to move around, obviously. But there's also a mention of inactive gates. Like, what's going on there? What would be making the Triglavian's internal gates?
I'm assuming
go
that the
off?
inactive gates are the original gates now shut off, and the
Oh, no, the description for it is explicitly. It's pretty much the same as their standard Triglavian gate.
weird.
But then it mentions that this one in particular is offline right now.
Well, maybe we have to do something to bring it online. I think that there might be more work to do. Glorification. So the previous message on the 28th, it looks like, was glorification pattern in totality realized. Triglav exalted DAS elements final liminality. Liminal proving threshold attained. Ancient domain stabilization gold consent. Domain of Poshvin conduit weaving gold consent. Cry Perun liminality fields processing. Cry Svarog liminality fields processing. Cry Velez liminality fields processing. Chislav Zemicord no Amata consolidation phase. And then it also said, the flow of Virage direction beyond through Poshvin. Forest of glorification hunting gold consent. Communion with Subornos Kybernauts gold consent.
I just want my 9 jumps between Amar and Jita back.
It seems like your 9 jumps between the and Geo, as well as many others, may not be returning. Unless TCP decide a different way, obviously with the systems missing, do they reassign the Stargates that are there? Or if they're not...
just leave the hole there. Those systems no longer connect.
Interesting. They refer to one of the Triglavian occupied stations as a diplomatic venue.
That's the thing. Like, I seriously think that we're going to learn more about the Triglavian collective soon, and that the hostile nature that we perceive the Triglavians from is by and large because Edencom tells us everything we know about them, right? Everything we've ever read about the Triglavians outside of like their intercepted data streams, all of the show infos, everything is from Edencom's perspective.
That's a very good point. It's all fake news.
I just thought Triglavian v Concord.
Well, Edencom is Concord.
But I mean, a full-out battle.
Yeah. Well, so okay. Basically, around the time that Nova was going to be coming out, so like 2-3 years ago, however long ago it was now, there were reports of attacks on shipping lanes in the southern shipping lanes of Malden Heath, and it was believed at that time it was done by Sancha, and there was a case made by Concord maintains case files on all of the different threats, and this threat was in particular was called Case Green Magic, and while that didn't really develop very far because of everything, what happened was Concord actually established a new division of Concord that was designed for more like shock troops and faster reaction and ground troop type stuff, called Aegis. Probably is like some sort of like allied group for what would later not become Nova or whatever, right? Well, when invasion started to ramp up the next year, Case Red Gamma, which is the Drifter Triglavian threat, was actually moved under Aegis. So Kasia Valkanir, the Provost General of Aegis, who's a former Amtar military general, is now in charge of Aegis, which is now in charge of the Drifter and Triglavian threat. And so from there, Aegis did all of those things that we noticed during that time of like blackout, like the New Eden Defense Fund, which increased all of our taxes, if you remember, right after blackout. That was caused by, Aegis put that forward. And then finally at Chapter 3, Aegis announced that they were working with Upwell and the other empires to construct the New Eden Defense the New Eden Common Defense Initiative, or EdenCom. And at that point, a new faction was created, EdenCom, and Aegis was moved under it as the primary operator. But Aegis is still, I would argue, technically a subdivision of Concord. So EdenCom is a combined defense initiative by all of the empires, but led by Concord. There's also a new World News article that we should probably... Oh, no, that's from the Scope. Never mind.
New?
Were you
I just
about
didn't
to
realize
leak,
that
Ash?
they put the Scope video on the World News and then the ticker on there too, which actually I really wish I'd noticed that yesterday.
So Ash, aside from all this shenanigans and the culmination and the finality of it all, what's on the other side?
That's a super good question. So right before Invasions, Chapter 3, I started talking about stars and everybody thought I was crazy. And then as soon as Chapter 3 started and stars were suddenly super important, I was like, hey guys, I know stars are cool, but you know what's cool? Planets. And if you look at the Scope videos and the other stuff that's going on right now, you see another doubling down on what is happening on planets. And this also goes into the Sinfindo ad, which is one of the ads that were added in as for the corporate or to the bulletin board like a few months ago. So each of the ads that was released all have some sort of reference to something, and most of them were actually mentioned directly after in the World News article for some reason, right? So like LiDi and their subcranial nanocontrollers are interesting because they may or may not be using PKN to distribute it in order to create mind control devices and allow and help people like Quaife control presidential elections, as well as being stolen by the Gristis. And there's this whole story around that, right? So each one of these things kind of have their own thing that's worth paying attention to. But then you have this one ad that shows all these different planets, Matar, MR Prime, etc. And then it like says, and it's an advertisement for this corporation called Sinfindo, I think is what it was. And
What the fuck? That sounds like a certain TIS host we know.
Let me get the actual name. But like, you can see it in the actually it just came on my billboard, so I'll be able to give you the name in just a few seconds. But it's supposedly like some sort of transportation company, but we've never heard of it prior to this at all. And it was mentioned in the World News directly, like once right afterwards, and again, never again. But I know that Hilmar tweeted an advertisement for this company like a week or two ago. So my expectation, I'm just going to go out on a limb. My expectation is one of the next things that's going to happen is some sort of, Sinfinamondo. My bad.
Not exactly Sinfindel, but it's close enough.
It's a holiday agency, isn't it? They sell vacations by the looks of it.
Based on Hilmar's tweet, it sounded like they were the transportation company, like they do luxury vacations or something like that. But either way, the point is that we know very little about them, but all of this combined leads me to believe that what they're working on is a new planetary interaction system. Because if you think about it, in a universe in which you've accepted that Nova is not going to be coming out, or at least if it is, it's not going to be like, as soon as you accept the fact that planetary districts are not going to be maintained by first-person shooters fighting over them, that kind of frees up your design space to be like, okay, well, how else do we want to manage planets? And so I actually think that privately they have been working on a new planetary conquest system. And so if you want to talk about what's next, I would assume that would be what it is, because that's what they've been telegraphing.
That sounds very, very, very parallel to the fact that we've already been kind of told that NetEase is working on a strategy game as its second Eve or New Eden based title. So that might be a port or a similar thing to that, or actually be linked and hooked directly into that.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to say because, like, yeah, as you pointed out, it could be a totally separate game. But as I said, like, planetary interaction was originally designed the way it was because the idea was that eventually Dust Soldiers would be fighting over that territory, but that like never came to be. So if they constantly are having this design space with this idea that like there will be some other methodology to like interact with the planets, then they wouldn't develop anything for it. But if they've scrapped what Nova was going to be, that frees up that design space. And then when you combine that with the fact that like Hilmar started doing PI, and then was like there's a lot of talk about like redoing PI, but then there was like this small UI change, and then that kind of was it. So I'm very suspicious, and my money's on the fact that there's going to be some sort of change to that soon. But I've been wrong up until now. Every single time I've said this.
There is now Triglavian variants of all the planets as well.
Right, that's the other thing. With the Triglavians taking over planets, that could change the planets dynamically, and that could be part of this whole like the resource redistribution and dynamic resource redistribution in particular could be spurred on by the mutative properties of Triglavians. So, in one of the previous world news, and in the actual previous world news, so Skarkon's Falls one, it says reports of Triglavians' biological interventions mount in conquered systems, including Arvarias, Kananoka, Como, Navula, Sakenta, and Vale. Pro-Triglavian groups claim populations of final liminality systems are, quote, being given the means to prove themselves and join the flow, end quote. Edencom Command dismisses claims of Triglavian sympathizers as, quote, repugnantly disingenuous propaganda masking grotesque atrocities against our people.
Quick side question: did we ever find out what Porovitium is?
So probably it has something to do with wormholes. I heard Uriel speculate during the stream that it was that it could be their name for Isogen 5 itself. I'm not opposed to that theory.
I think it would be that, just based on what I'm looking at, because in the renaming of stations that will happen as part of the Triglavian takeover, so they've taken over many of the stations and they've renamed based on their purpose, and I think the purposes roughly mirror what they used to be. So they've got, I'm going to guess this is, I don't know what this one will be, but they've got one new name is bioadaptation chambers, another one extractive terminus, which is like the old mining stations, semiosis theatre, which seems to be the diplomatic venue one, mutaplasmid farm, it's an interesting one, and then the final one is a Porovitium vault, which implies it's something that can be stored, which would make sense if it was Isogen 5.
Yeah. So each star has a Porvitium value, and obviously they're trying to transmute the Porvitium, and the act of doing so seems to make the science balls in the back of the Porvitium transmuter. So it is either some property of the star, or it's something like their name for Isogen 5 itself. If they have a stockpile of it, then that makes sense that it would be the same thing. Now, if they're stockpiling it, that makes me instantly think back to the Isogen 5 caches from the original, the original ones that went up, and the fact that some ancient empire thought it would be a good idea to make caches of Isogen 5 for some reason, and trigger them all to be able to go off like they did. So, which brings back to the question of, like, we're still not 100% sure who the Triglavians are. We know that they have records from the first and second Jovian Empire that they refer to, which makes them contemporaries, but whether or not they are the Talican, the Enheduani, or some other faction is still largely unknown.
I think you need to fast track the origins of the Enheduani and the whole back to the Jove and the Triglavians' connection to the Jove.
There is no such thing as a fast track to the Enheduani. but I can try. So, hold on. So basically, there is a subset of the Jovians known as the Adheduani. And what we know about the Adheduani is that the Adheduani really, really, really like to meddle with things a lot. In fact, most of the things that the Jovians have been like accused of being directly related with, often it's the Adheduani themselves that are the ones that ultimately get blamed for it. Now, we do have quite a bit of information about the Adheduani, but it's from a very specific person. In Templar 1, we get a conversation between somebody and a recording of an ancient Jove, or of a different Jove, who claims to know about the Adheduani, is telling the whole story about the Jove, which is why we know the story about the Jove. But the problem is that character, Venal, when he's shown in the previous chronicle in Theodicy, he's actually working against the Adheduani. His accusations is that the Adheduani are out of control and that they're just like messing with things. And so there's a Jovian faction that he's part of that's actually trying to undermine the Adheduani. And in the end, he gets, the things proceed, and in the end, apparently Venal dies. So then we get his recording in Templar 1, but his recording in Templar 1 is actually very pro Adheduani. The story he tells it promotes Adheduani. So my theory is that while a lot of what is told by Gravis, not Venal, sorry, by Gravis in Templar 1, while a lot of it is true and verifiable about the nature of the sleepers, the others, and the construct, some of the stuff, in particular the Adheduani, is still suspect. Now, that being said, the story goes that in the early days of the Jovian Empire, before they even settled, when they come through the Eve Gate, they had to travel via sublight engines to the Heaven constellation. And during that time, the Eve Gate collapsed. So the ships themselves, because they were operating at sublight speeds, the journey took a very long time. So they divided their population into two groups. There was a group of people who remained inside of a virtual reality construct in their bodies in suspended animation. And these were supposed to be like the leaders and the developers of the Stargates once they got there. And those were known as the architects. And then there was a group of people that were like the pilots and the maintenance of the ships and crew that were designed to look after the virtual reality constructs. And their job was to help the architects get in, communicate outside of the construct and transition into and out of the construct. And that was known as that group is the Adheduani. So at some point, this group that was originally kind of like the prophets, almost the intermediaries between the Jovians of the outside of the construct and the Jovians inside of the construct, eventually they became very power hungry. There's been many differences within the Jove society over the years, but the accusation is that the Adheduani have now split off. They may in fact have actually developed the means to turn themselves into a disembodied infomorph, some sort of being of light that can read minds and talk to people in their minds and whatnot. The Adheduani seem to have some very interesting powers. They've also done things like they've meddled with the Mimitar by creating the Elders, and potentially even helped out the Amar a little bit with the artifacts of the Amitat, Amitat and Amitat. Boy. Anywho, the Adheduani are most famously key central figures in manipulating the Amar into attacking the Joves in the Battle of Vakatioth, and therefore causing the fall of the Golden Fleet and the release of the Mimitar people.
So meddlers in history, is that also the group that is suspected of being the true enemy and meddling in everything that's going on right now, or is that more the Jove proper? Because I've heard some shenanigans about the Trigs actually being the good guys, right? And that this whole thing is the empires and the pod pilots being manipulated by some of these ancient ones, and the Trigs are actually here to help us.
Okay, so the Adheduani are almost certainly still around. The proper Jove, the rest of the Third Jovian Empire, are effectively gone. There is a very interesting at the end of sine wave omega. There is a letter given, I think it's to Shaku Makor, the head of the Mimitar Republic. But it could be somebody. It could be somebody else. I'd have to look it up exactly who's the one that receives the letter. But at the end of the letter, it says, "You didn't think that the War of a Million Lies was over, did you?" Which is interesting because the only other time that the War of a Million Lies has been referred to, from my understanding, is when Venal and Matashi Reich, the head of the SOCT, are discussing current events in Inheritance. At one point, Venal refers to "Thus came, the dark times and the War of a Million Lies," and it is confirmed that that is a reference to the Society of Conscious Thought's attempt to basically take over the Jovian government from the inside and become like a shadow government, which ended up not working out well for them in the long run. And one of the reasons why the SOCT was so external to the rest of the Jovian societies, because the Jove kind of didn't trust them as much as they did before, because they kind of took over everything for a period of time. But if the War of a Million Lies is not over yet, then the question is, what are the SOCT doing? Who do they work with or under? And what means are they willing to go to in order to enact their will? Some particularly suspicious events. There's actually a whole set of chronicles that we almost never address, called the Black Mountain Chronicles, and their follow-ons, which came out basically in 2006, I think it was. CCP announced that they were starting this cycle of increased chronicle development in order to develop an ongoing story. And 2 years into that was when Sleepers came out. So this development of the story was the proto steps of the Precursor Crisis. And as part of this, there was a whole set of chronicles about called the Black Mountain Chronicles that led into what would eventually be called, the series, the Book of Emptiness. So the Book of Emptiness is this magic technological device that the SOCT were hunting that is effectively a mind control device. So you've got the SOCT actively hunting down a powerful mind control tech. And also another interesting accusation is when the Blood Raiders found Jamil Soram's super weapon in the Chronicles, the World End Chronicles. So the Blood Raiders wanted Jamil's super weapon so that way they could cause the Great Harvest, right? They could just start killing a whole bunch of people. It'd be great. And the Blood Raider that's on the field radios home, and in the end he gets Omir, Bloody Omir, the head of the Blood Raiders himself. And Omir says, "You got to go get the weapon." And another person comes on the line, and that person is Jovian. And he transmits the codes that allows them to override the rogue drones, to shut them down and forcefully pacify them so that way they could go and take the weapon. And in that chronicle, it says that's an SOCT location or something like that. So there's a side implication that the SOCT was attempting to assist the Blood Raiders in recovering this weapon because they wanted it for themselves. So what exactly the SOCT is doing in all of this, the SOCT is now on the Concord Inner Chambers. So Matashi Reich, the head of the SOCT, is now in Concord's Inner Council, and he's also one of the few people in the cluster that actually witnessed Jamil's corrupted infomorph with the other in it prior to her destruction. And we also know that the SOE are doing their own private experimentation. They secretly discovered Thera. They were doing experiments on Drifter technology. They developed the Alpha Clone technology off of Drifter technology, and they continue to perform not illegal, but mysterious and questionable development. What's up?
I just found something that confirms, at least in my mind, that Paravitium is Isogen 5. Because part of it is the 5-faced god of war in Slavic mythology. And they're stashing it up, and it comes from stars. It's Isogen 5.
It's been pointed out that Porvitium literally means like time flaw in Latin. But it also is very confusing that they would be using a single Latin word along with all of these other. So
part
that
of
does
it
make more
turns
sense.
into Prometheus, the West Slavic god of war. He's a 5-faced god of war.
Wow.
Yeah, if you pull it apart for long enough, you can find, and also he's directly related to Perun, so it's definitely that one.
You heard it here first.
I'm gonna go dab on the Arataka boys.
And this just brings me on to the something that I've been pondering, because I think I talked to you about this, Ash, already. The fact that this mind control theme is running through all of this with the super weapon and the manipulation and hacking. It's very much what's it called, with the puppeteer, the anime, where you got this AI-like consciousness in the background that's kind of trying to hack into reality, right? And you're talking about infomorphs, which is basically what we would call souls. But when you look at the Triglavians, as I think I asked you the other week, they seem to have figured out a way to counter this by the way that they don't only have two things in their head, they kind of have three, right? They are almost in this triumvirate like entities, which reminds me a lot of Egyptian law of Ka, Ba, and Kaibit. So I'm just thinking, is this where we are heading with the law, into a new rabbit hole of Egyptian law?
I mean, now you're just teasing me.
No, because it's kind of, I think
I'm
it's
just kidding.
interesting
No, yeah.
in the form that you have these triple entities, three voices,
Mhm.
humans and normal capsuleers. I think you've talked about this way back, about basically the bifurcation of the brain and the two entities in everyone. And by having three, you can't be hacked, basically.
Right. Yeah. One of the things that I've always kind of theorized about is that the Nafka, if the Nafka is in fact like basically a detached person, like a soul taken out of the body effectively to run their computers, it would make a lot of sense if the Triglavians are used to dealing with viruses and computer hacks and manipulation and stuff, because that way they have a non-AI as their quote-unquote shipboard computer. The Koshoi is like, I know that Uriel has theorized that the Koshoi are actually like the same kind of disembodied nature as like the Inheduani may in fact be, or the Talrog or elders may be. It's tough to say. Another piece that's complicating this is that Eve Echoes has a lot of really good lore in it, and it speaks specifically to these precursor stuff in a way that our lore doesn't do. It doesn't contradict anything. There's no like, oh look, this can't be true because of this other thing. It actually answers a whole bunch of questions, but technically Echoes isn't like stamped canonical. So the best we can do is look at this as like, this is what the Yanyong claim happened back then. So it gives us another perspective. But one of the things that's really interesting is that in Echoes, they speak about how in the dawn of time, more or less, there was the Yanyong and the Talikan. And the Talikan had worked with the Jove to create the Sleepers, which were the first virtual or hybrid civilization. And so the Sleepers actually left the Jove during the first Jovian Empire and came and lived with the Talikan, and the Talikan transformed them into the way that they are now. And but then the Talikan accidentally created the AI war, and there isn't a whole bunch of stuff about the AI war, but it apparently was really bad, and it caused the Talikan to create a computer virus to stomp out the worm or the AI. But in doing so, they ended up killing a vast, like a huge chunk of sleepers because they were, tied to this virtual reality construct. So the sleepers ended up leaving and rejoining the Jove until the end of the Second Jovian Empire, in which case they left again, and this time found the ruins of the sleepers, of the Talikan, and hid there from the Jove. from that point on. So one of my theories is that if you accept that some or all of this is true, then the other itself could be the remnants of this ancient AI that was created by the Talican, and they tried to stop it, but ended up destroying themselves, and the other remained. The reason why I really like this is because it really does talk about like the tale of two technologies, right? So you have the Talican, who mostly used the power of stars, Dyson swarms like W477 TAC-P, which, by the way, W477 TAC-P is not, or was not, a blue or yellow star. Therefore, it could not have been an Isogen 5 thing. It was simply just the power of the star itself being used to manipulate gravitational fields in space-time in order to be able to create connections and static gates that wouldn't have been eligible otherwise. Meanwhile, as Yan Yung are masters of gravitational forces, and Isogen 5 have unique gravitonic properties, so it could be very well possible that the Yan Yung were the original developers of the Isogen 5 technology, and that's why the caches were made, to either protect or assault Anoikis, which was the stronghold of the Talican at the time. But now both of those ancient races are gone, and all that's left is their weapons and tools and traps that they had developed for each other.
So on the topic of playable race, what's your thoughts on that one, Ash? Do you think we can actually play Triglavians?
No.
So this goes back to some of the things that CCP was saying last year, I want to say, where they're talking about like redoing the way that new players enter into the game, and perhaps even having it so that you go through the entire new player experience. Like you build your character, you do your character creator, and you build what you look like, because they've discovered that people not doing that ends up being a problem because they have no connection to their stuff. So you build your character, but then you jump into the tutorial. The tutorial takes place in Uli. All new players start out in Uli. That makes that the new player system. It can have its own rules, whatever. And then at the end of that, that's when you select which faction you wish to join, and that could be any of the empires, or it could even be pirates or whatever. So I think that part of the purpose of the Triglavians and all of this stuff about like biomanipulation is the idea that like they're kind of building out a framework to justify transforming your quote unquote race after the fact. So you could actually go through a transition and now you are Triglavian and not Amarian. But it may not necessarily be like you're not born true Triglavian or something.
That's interesting. How would they wrap the law around that one? I can see how that works with the Trigs, kind of. How you are adapted or differentiated into one of these Triglavian entities and get your own third personality thing and physically adapted to live in their space. But how would that work with the other factions?
It's hard to say. I mean, like it could be as simple as basically your original birth race doesn't really matter that much, right? So it may just be a matter of now you just get to select which faction you want to be part of instead of it being some sort of because regardless of who you're born into, you're being stuffed into a biomass suit that is designed to look like that race. So it ultimately doesn't matter from a Capsuleer point of view which race you are.
So you almost get the faction upgrade. So I get more and more Galente armor almost in the Mandalorian model, where eventually I become true Galente when I reach +3 or more in standing, basically. I don't know if Ash got that last part, but it sounded
he's
like
away.
there's a lot of silence. Maybe he
Oh, I'm sorry.
ripped.
I'm also dealing with, like, people are messaging. There's a lot going on today. It's a busy day for pro Triglavian forces.
I like
Scum.
the concept of gradual initiation into the factions, including the Triglavians. I think that's actually a much more modern way of handling the whole identity thing in the.
Okay, noted.
I think we've drained this one, Matterall. I think we are fundamentally done, unless CCP wants to drop some sort of big thing in our face, so we can't stop the stream.
I'd be tempted to drop the thing, but dropping the thing would be a bad idea, I think.
Do we know that? So perimeter was restored. Have we had any other major noteworthy outages yet? Is there is
For a while,
perimeter?
pretty much everywhere got hit, I think, near enough. On and off. And I don't know if... Do we know if the blackouts are still going... Not blackouts. Switches are
Outages,
still going
whatever,
off
yeah.
and on. Because that's still going. I don't know if any systems are still down.
I think that there's flickering, but I'm not sure about systems. Let me go. See, it's harder to track when there's not a Twitch channel showing them all.
Yeah, that was a bit of a get out of jail free card. Completely unrelated to Triglavian stuff, but has anyone actually talked about the wacky new font rendering on CC? It's
I really like it.
That's my eyes.
Oh yeah.
No, it's horrible. It's like really glowy and nasty.
Oh, I haven't seen it. All right, I think we're done here, right? Everybody good?
I think that's all I got for now. I mean, I would just say that today's your last day to be prepared, and tomorrow we're going to get final liminalities, ore changes, quantum core changes, and very soon we're going to get the Blood Raider Crimson Harvest event. So
Stockpile that to last night, boys and girls.
What's it mean to have a last day? Is there anything I should be doing today that I won't be able to do tomorrow?
Well, if you want to put anything or get anything, if you want to put anything into or get anything out of final liminality systems, it's probably going to be easier today than tomorrow.
Yeah, if you want to live in trick space, move there now. If you don't want to live in lockdown trick space, get out now.
More or less.
Is that what they're doing? Just social distancing?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we also have masks and everything. It's a very realistic game.
Thank God.
Pretty solid.
The other thing you want to do, I think it's too late. We don't actually know what will happen, but if you want to get in before the core change, you want to drop your structure 12 hours ago. If you drop it now,
Yeah.
Your structure will be the other side of downtime. Nobody knows if that will have the desired effect or not, but
Likely it will.
You might
though,
have
because
just missed the boat.
because you have to put in the core to finish the anchoring. So my bet is that from now on, like if you drop the structure right now, you would need a core for it to finish anchoring. That's my bet.
Yeah, so the cost of the Dreadnought chipper is up by about 30 billion. Just saying.
That's another thing that I will also say, which is that there's standings requirements, and the deeper into Triglavian space you're going, it seems like the higher the standings requirements are going to be. So if you would like to get involved in that, you still can. All of the minor victories still exist, and as of the changes that happened, I think about a week ago, the sites inside of minor victories and fortresses will likely stay the same even after tomorrow. So there are soloable sites in minor victories. There's emerging conduits for the pro Edencom. If you're a pro Edencom guy, then you'll run emerging conduits. If you're a pro Triglavian guy, then you'll run forward posts. But you can gain standings with your chosen faction by running those sites or by running them in fleets, both staging areas and field bases. The field bases and flashpoints, which are the dread sites, are available inside of the fortresses, of which there's I think 53, fortresses total. Some of them are low sec, so bear that in mind. And then there's tons of minor victories. So Edencom minor victories are a good place to go if you're pro Triglavian and you want to gain standings. Triglavian minor victories are a good place to go if you're Edencom and want to gain standings. However, realize that there could be massive gate camps, so you may want to get somebody from the opposite faction to help you move in heavy equipment, so that way you can then run the sites inside of the systems.
I have one last thing for you, Ash, if you
Sure.
want. It's just there was a Vanilla Sky question, and just to read it out verbatim. I have a question for Ash, please. I heard a theory today that one of the things that the Trigs have come to tell us is that all of New Eden is in fact a virtual construct. I don't know enough to actually elaborate, but could this be a possibility? AKA, are we going to be screaming tech support?
Probably not. This actually, this is probably a conversion or perversion of the idea that so the other, which is the artificial intelligence that comes out of the construct, is trying to convince the sleepers that they are sleeping, that they've forgotten that they're actually in a virtual reality construct. And so it has been this kind of tongue-in-cheek joke that the drifters are in fact trying to help us realize that we're just playing a video game. But A, that was tongue-in-cheek, and B, that's not really connected to the Triglavian, so that's probably not going to be the thing. But it would be interesting to hear more about what the Triglavians have to say about the sleepers, the drifters, etc., because clearly they know stuff about them that we don't. One of the most interesting statements from the HFN seems to imply that the early proto-sleeper civilization, was from the first Jovian Empire, was actually a combination of Jovian and Triglavians, that something went wrong and they ended up having to purge the entire thing, because they reference this when they're trying to figure out what to do about Sancha. So the relationship between these different forces are very, very complex, and we're just going to have to learn more about them as we are able to interact with the different clades individually.
So, boys and girls, just try to imagine there is no spoon.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys realize this, but EVE Online is not real. It's a video game.
Oh,
Wow.
I know, it's controversial.
Way to break our hearts. Who can do the Yates quote?
not.
Step lightly, because you step on my dreams, Ash.
All right. Well, that guy took off, so he was chilling out there at the gate. All right. Thanks, Ash, for coming by, explaining some things. Spod for looking some things up. And the rest of you guys, Caleb, for asking questions, keeping it going. You guys have any last questions there in chat? If so, put them in there now. Otherwise, we will probably have an Eve News episode today at 5. What else were we talking about today? I guess the thing is really these gates that are coming up and down all day long, all over the place. Even Jita got hit.
Tomorrow's patch is going to be a big, nasty one full of all kinds of crazy stuff. It might have the mineral changes. It's definitely going to have crazy Triglavian stuff. And it's definitely got the first major stage of the core thingamajig, the structure core things.
Right.
And the aura rebalance.
Well, that's a maybe, but probably yes.
Is it a maybe?
I mean, it's either this week or next week, because they said mid-October. So if it's not tomorrow, then it's like sometime within the week after.
So it's not. Okay. That seems like a big one.
Yep. It may not necessarily be tomorrow.
you
Like
all
those are the kind
tomorrow.
of changes that they can roll out on like Thursday or something weird.
Oh, by the way, the markets, how are they reacting to that? Take a quick look.
Everything has gone to the moon.
The moon.
Well, freighters are about nearly double their price now, so that's one thing that's rocketed.
Freighters?
Check
Yeah,
out
like
more
Rare,
fight.
sorry, Charon, Obelisk, that kind of thing.
Did you guys check out more fight?
Let's look at freighters first. I want to see. That's industrial ships, advance. No, it's not, is it? They consider
There's
capitals?
literally a search bomb, Admiral.
I don't want to use search. I like going organic. Way people can see
Wow.
you can see where I went. Providence. Oh yeah. 6 months. Oh, that's a
Yeah, they're all 2 billish now.
That's double in price. Bowhead up. Obelisk. Or that's Fenrir. Obelisk. Lente. Up.
Yeah, I wasn't happy when I figured out I needed another freighter last night.
I should have bought a lot of these yesterday. Let's look at jump freighter, see if it takes a freighter to make a jump freighter, so those might be up too, but not as much because it takes a lot of T2 material, which hasn't really been squished yet.
Except for more fight.
Except for Morphite. We'll go look at Morphite now. I don't think these take Morphite, actually. Only modules take Morphite. So, let's see if I remember. Manufacturing and research materials. Whoa. We want raw materials. Standard ores.
Minerals.
Oops. Took a wrong turn at Albuquerque.
You're on the Oregon Trail. It's minerals, metal.
Up here. Not raw materials, but refined materials under minerals.
Just about.
And
Yes.
Morphite. Oh, Morphite. Break my heart. What happened?
I think it's weaponizing ISK. I can't, of course, entirely prove this, but it smells like a very smart
Manipulation?
Pappy, not manipulation. It's the shortage, right? They are basically cornering that market because this has a lot of potential secondary effects. So if it is Pappy doing this, I kind of applaud them because that's actually smart.
Remember, there's around 50% less yield of Morphite in ore now.
Why? Because Delva shut down.
No, because
No,
of
they're
the
stripping
fact
it from the ore. Like starting tomorrow, when they do the ore. A lot of the
it goes from 300 to 140.
and all of the morphite gets removed from all of the Triglavian ore.
Yeah, go to the actual market data instead of the graph manual because I don't think you can even see the next hike.
That explains why some of my old goon friends have suddenly asked me, can I please buy some Morphite?
Some more Morphite, please.
Market data, please.
Yeah, market data. You want to see the last 10 days?
I don't want to see price history. I want to see the current market data, the current price on the actual market.
Sorry, I got you. 45. It was only 2 pieces there, so let's start at 57. What'd that chart say?
Yeah, you can see it's jumped to 57.
Oh my gosh.
As I told you, I thought my 48k backstop was a backstop. Not a backstop.
Went
It's
right through
gone.
the backstop. It's actually way up here.
Yes, it's
Wait, so
why
what was the?
I said you can't see it on the graph.
What was the world ride price and what's the price now?
Well, we were down at 18k before all of this shenanigans started, right?
18, now up to 45. It's been up here though. Morphite used to be super expensive.
It's more likely to just call it out at 56, right?
Yeah.
56, 57, and it is likely that it's going to go up because if you look at the market depth there's not that much.
Yeah. There's not a
It's
lot for
very
sale.
small
Wow.
piles, so they might actually disappear completely. And again, I strongly suspect that it's a manipulation. But of course, as Jan said, it is also because the shortage is actually there. It's practically 90% that gets cut out, right? So yes, it's shortage as well. But this does not reflect the expected stockpiles. People are basically just completely cornering it.
All right, so it looks like it's gone from what 20%, 20,000 to 60,000. It's gonna take a while to chew through 100,000 here and then here and then here. But up until then, there's nothing, no supply. So it'll rip right through all that if people actually
down
want
to
it.
66. So 66, 68 is what
It'll
I'm
slow
expecting
down.
it to hit.
Well, also a lot of people just heard that the gates to Jita got shut down, and like people are really bad at information, so chances are realize up, and so we're going to see some interesting disturbances to Jita's trade. I would predict for the next 24 hours. People try to figure out what the heck's going on.
Well, because of course, as Jan said, well, if you're cutting something off by about 90%, that should expect to increase in value by 10 times, right? That's pretty much just napkin math. So it should have gone
50.
to, well, no, 90% reduction is to a tenth, right?
Yeah, but it's from 300 to 140. And some Triglavian ores. I don't know how big they were in supplying morphite to the market.
Minor, like a whole, like a set of Rakavine refinement had like 2 morphite in it.
Yeah, but CCP had calculated all that for us and said that the reduction is equivalent to something like 90% of all the available morphite, right? I'm expecting that to be fairly true because we do have morphite still, and the availability in the roids and all that. So it's not going to be. I don't think it's going to be a factor 50. That would be bonkers. Because I know that we do have some in trick space, right, to do a little bit of supply, and they are going to put the carrot back in. So this is a complete overshoot, but it should theoretically have gone to about 180,000, right, if it was a factor of 10.
Once more, to be clear, Triglavian ore is going to be modified as well. All of the morphite is going to be removed from all of the trig ore that as far as I know. In fact, the only thing special from high-sec ore that will be true about Rakavine is that it will have isogen on it.
You sure about that? I'm pretty sure that it still had some trace morphite in trig ore.
Completely removed. They really want to lock down morphite to true nullsec only.
Fair enough. Then then expect it to go even higher. But
And
there's a lot of
people have been
stockpile.
fielding these last few big fights on dreads.
That's why they're painful.
Well, dreads are just raw T1 minerals. Giant
it's
piles
about
of
the
T1
guns.
minerals. Ah, yeah. Well, a lot of people use T1 gun dreads just to make them expendable, right? I don't know. That's interesting.
I don't know. They'll have to. But let's look at the rest
Oh,
of the
there's that.
minerals to see. Starting with titanium, nice slow climb up, but definitely climb up. You see this massive buying spree, so we'll mark this as the beginning of the incline. This is all from here to here is all preparation for what's going to happen, right? Because this hasn't really hit yet. It's going to hit tomorrow or in the next few days. So if you've been paying attention, you got in on this climb, as steep as it is. If you didn't, you're out.
What's Plex actually doing right now? Just out of curiosity.
Pay for it later. Check Plex. Pilot license. Plex. Mile leap up. Hold on.
Check the market data because we don't know if there's.
Well, it looks like it's on its way down again. The market data. 2,682,000. Oh, that's an anomaly. It's actually about 2.8.
Okay, so not crazy. It's not going bonkers
I'm
yet.
Alex
seeing a
has
good
actually been a
mix
bit
of
wild
dreads
this
with
week.
T2 guns and dreads with T1 guns on the Z-Kill. And that matches my understanding. I've been told that, like, for the most part, dread bombs that are designed to be expendable will only use T1 guns because the difference is such a big in cost, and when you're just bombing, then it doesn't matter if you have Tech 1 versus Tech 2. You just bring an extra dread to make up for it.
That's Plex. But let's see what skill injectors are doing. Ah.
Plex surged 2-3 days ago to a decent high, and it's starting to recover back to normal now. But I don't really know what the inspiration behind that sudden surge was.
Well, it's all very interesting.
I really like this morphite strategy that apparently is actually almost complete. That means that CCP has pretty much given Null complete exclusivity or almost monopoly to morphite, which means that
Right.
Tech 2 is going to be something that you primarily will see out there, and it gives them a really, really nice, easy to carry export good that they can actually ship to where they want without having the hassle of massive logistic stuff. So that's really only the problem the other way around when we are talking about titanium and pyrite in Null. Wonder what that's going to look like and how they're going to get that out there in.
Compressed jump freighters, yo.
Yeah, of course, but that's still a lot of jump freighters.
It is true, but but the same is also true with Noxium and Losec, and that's the thing that a lot of people, like, I've even had people kick back on Reddit. It's like, really think people are going to mine in Losec? The answer is someone's gotta, because otherwise we don't have any Noxium.
Indeed, Ash. Couldn't be more right. And there's alternative sources, right? We've talked a bit about maybe we will see a research of something like gun mining, and CCP might actually intentionally be trying to shift some of the value from its printing in Null to actually something like raw materials for ratting. I would personally like to see something like that. And then I'd like to see more of the old utility on the loot drops actually coming back. I would love to see them bring meta modules back into Invention. I think that's a very, very valid thing to consider requesting, especially if they are thinking about doing something with slot limitations on industry.
I know that Fozzie has mentioned over and over and over again historically that moving meta modules to some sort of manufacturing system is like an idea or dream of his, a goal of his. But also, like, not only does this also means that these things are almost like metrics for CCP, right? So, like, if you want to measure whether or not the ore changes are having the correct impact, basically you just wait until players start valuing the loot. Like right now, most players don't even bother looting stuff because that's not where the value is. But if things continue to change, and therefore you need things like Noxium and Isogen and all that stuff, and therefore it's valuable to loot stuff off of the field, then people will start doing it again. And that behavior will be noted by CCP and will be able to be used as like a key indicator that's like, see, look, these changes cause these changes in behavior.
Exactly, and they're not very bot friendly, right?
Like a good example actually was this last fight, right? So you have all of these Titans, and ultimately the option, and the successful option, was to utilize subcaps. No better display has been made recently that the changes that CCP has made has been effective than that, right? Like prior to this, the Titans would have just been the Apex forces, but because of the changes that was made by Team Talos and them throughout the year, like all of those changes that have been made throughout the year has set up to make that fight that happened way more textured than it would have been otherwise. And that's an indication that they've been successful, right? Because now Titans are great, but not the end all be all. There is a reason to do something else, which is good.
We're just definitely not going to be bored the next 3 to 6 months. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's the other thing I'm wondering about, because like within the next week we getting a new trailer and a new presentation for like what's to come. We have now would be around Eve Vegas, which would be when we would get like expansion level content announcement. But we really have very little information about what's happening, except for the fact that we know that this chapter, and more importantly, the event that's been going on for over a year and a half now, is finally wrapping up and coming to the close. This is the first time that a story arc of EVE Online has actually ended. So, what happens next is kind of very exciting. But I hope, like, once totality happens, that we'll see a video, or like another live stream by CCP that will help set up, like, what is the next thing that's going to happen, and start building up the hype towards that. Also planets.
And I don't know if you feel like I do. I think these changes that we've seen throughout this year and the ones that we are expecting in the future seems to be tying all of EVE gameplay together in a way that you have to care about what the rest of the universe is doing. You can't just sit there and twiddle your thumbs in Null or in low-sec or in wormholes. You kind of have to pay a little bit of attention to everything, including what things like triangles are doing.
Yes, interchangeability or exchange is a big design feature or design goal of theirs. A good example of this is actually the Observatory Flashpoint sites, right? So the Observatory Flashpoint site, one side will give you the BPCs to build the Dread, while the other side gives you the loot to build the Dread, which means even though in every single way the pro-Triglavians and the pro-Edencom guys are supposed to be enemies with each other, we're put up against each other. The story says we're against each other. They put us into situations that continually generate bad blood between us and make us compete with one another. And yet, if we really want to build the Dreads, some sort of exchange has to happen, because you don't get both.
That's just genius design, in my opinion.
But I just think that that's indicative of the kind of philosophy that they've been implementing more and more. So this is very similar to like in EVE Echoes, right, where each individual piece has their own like monopoly on how this gets distributed. Like you have to go to special anomalies in order to get data cores. You have to go into low-sec in order to get specific tiered sites, et cetera, in order to get the pieces to reinvent things. And so these all come together and require you either do everything or work with other people that are doing different things. EVE Online used to be way more like that, and part of the last decade and the placation of the player base that happened was a homogenization of this, and this is why a lot of people that like talked badly about the aura rebalance. I think that this is, I like to say that this is correcting the original sin, right? Like if we want to talk about citadels and structures and capitals and rock walls and moon mining and how all these things have adjusted and manipulated and ruined the game, the original sin was making it so that the resources are evenly distributed throughout the entire cluster, so that way everything can be gotten everywhere. That was the original sin. It used to be that nullsec was mad because they couldn't get tritanium as easily in highsec, and so now, or in nullsec, so now they added that there and made it so that basically everything can be gotten everywhere, and that was a mistake. It was the first of several mistakes, and so as painful as it is, that needs to be corrected, so that way, like I said, low-sec mining will remain a joke until it's necessary, and then somebody has to get it figured out.
Yeah, I won't be pulled into that one today, Ash. I would love to go there, but I think we should save that for one of the other days of the week, because I know there's going to be potentially reaction stuff the entire week.
Yeah. Well, there's going to be a lot going on. And like I said, what gets announced for, right? So like CCP now for this whole year has been working on this 3-month quadrant cycle. So we kind of go through this 3-month cycle where we start out with like a video, and we're all like, this video is confusing. I don't understand anything, but that thing looks cool. And then throughout the next 3 months, we slowly but surely begin to lock down, like, okay, that's what this is, and that's what this is, and that's what they meant by this. And then at the end of it, you're like, okay, I kind of understand what the whole video is saying, but now we're in this interesting world where we know nothing else because we've spent the last 3 months obsessed with this video, and now that we've sorted it, now we're back in the unknown again, and then they release the next one. And so this is going to be the third chapter or quadrant in that pattern, hopefully. So I assume that we're going to get a video within the next week or two.
Any ideas on how low sec mining will be solved? I forgot. Somebody told me how it would be solved. I forgot.
I mean, just daring individuals. I mean, just going out there and mining some stuff to get this. It's going to be valuable. So either a small gang with some sort of protection, a scout or whatever. There's plenty of low sec that's relatively dead, and you know, like there are people out there that do low sec mining operations right now, and it's just if you're a little bit more daring and a little bit more cautious, then you can get away with quite a bit. And if everybody is just deciding that it's not worth it, then that makes it so the person who does make it happen, it's super valuable for them.
Yeah, and if you add the potential Rorqual and Orca remakes, right, and if we get the carrot in the form of on resources in the form of a massive boost and agency and variables to moon mining, then LowSec becomes a completely valid place to live. Of course, under completely different rules, but definitely worth actually working in and mining in and having some skin in that game.
Oh, all right. I'm going to play you guys out. A recommendation for the Wrecking Machine, the Triglavian mix.
Heck yeah.